Alrighty, so welcome to week 16 in CIT93 JavaScript. Love saying it that way. Uh, it is week 15 in the RL in my world right now as I'm recording this, and I've seen the work from Monday night, and I've done several now technical interviews. So at this point, I now have planned for the rest of the semester. And I'm going to go over that today. The thing I do want to say, though, is about the Thanksgiving break, right, that we're coming up to, is that if you're not on the technical interview schedule by the time we go out for break, just know that I will place a 0 into that item, as I've talked about before, so that you know the impact, but you can still schedule one. That's what I want you to know. Okay. So that's the way that's going to be. That's the way it's going to flow as far as the content for this abbreviated week that we have. So the code challenges, one thing I've really noticed is that, and you may have as well, because the code challenges don't require a lot of code, your commits are way important. And so, and having a very concise commit that I can actually look at and evaluate, and several of you are doing a great job of documenting what you tried, even if you didn't get the code working. And so that's great, but just know that these code challenges make it more, even more important. They were already important than they already were. Okay, so let's talk about this week. Okay, so let's actually roll over here. So here we are. We're going to finish up for what we're going to do at this point, the AQI. Now, by the way, here's kind of the ending state it's going to be in. As far as actively getting the location, passing that location to the AQI, using the built-in navigation to get the Latin long, then passing that over to the AQI or actually Open Weather Map to get the AQI. So that's what we do. We're going to end up finishing up. So we need to do the UI for this because we don't have it as of yet. So we'll do that. And then that's 6.1. And then for 6.1, we'll have a code challenge there, more probably related to actually digging into that AQI object and pulling out the pieces and then handling that for the UI. But I've been thinking about 6.2 and I've been thinking about next week because our last week of content is next week, and your finish and share is actually going to be step 6 of our development, our decision making application. And so what I am doing in attendance this week is actually preparing us, and I think I'm actually going to use these 2 items to help you prepare so that by the time we get to here, it should be polishing up your final pieces of this. So in order to help us, right, think about this, what I'm going to have you do is actually give some thought, give some thought, and should be, and research to the following, right? Week 17, like I said, we will share out our last step. Now, I had thought before that integrating an API was too much, but now that we've been through it, I don't think so, because there's a couple options that we have here. And this is where, your input is really helpful. So I'm thinking the integration, right? So the requirements, it has to integrate an API into your decision app. Now, most APIs, not most, many of the ones you may consider actually may need Latin long, so we already have that integrated. Some of your apps may want to use something else on the Open Weather API, and this is where you could look through here and see if what falls into the free category is something that you could use. And now, when I say this, is that it needs to be related somehow to your decision-making app. It could be loosely, right? And in some ways, I'd also, and I was kind of thinking about this down here, is that I would probably give 80% of the points if you just reintegrated what we've already done, right? And maybe it's not directly, but 80% of the points for the last decision app is not bad. But if you want to get 100%, you would take that last step of adding something that we haven't done. Okay, so as an example, what I'm going to do is I do want the AQI. I do need the Latin long. I do want the AQI, but I also want weather. Like and there's, as you saw, I clicked over there, there's different types of weather, but I'd probably just want current forecast or current temperature or something like that. So by adding, I can use what we've already set up, add one more of that open weather. So I don't have to go out and find anything else. I can work within that system since it's fairly straightforward. The documentation is okay. But, maybe you have something you want to try to do outside of that. Now, in that case, that is, that's a little more challenge. So just having one API call that you then update the UI to, I mean, that'd be fine, as long as you could have something showing on the page, but the key would be following the standards we've learned with separating the data part from the integration part, right? So I think what we'll do for 6.2 is actually just have you take your step 5, bring it over into a step 6 folder, and just reintegrate what we've already done as kind of step 1, or like the first thing we would do. So if you want to, and this is the key, not key, this is what you want to think about. If you have something outside of that you want to attempt, cool, just find a free one, right? So many APIs you need to actually have many are required to have a credit card billing. Like I actually have to pay for OpenAI because we use it for the checkpoints that we've used in the past. So in order for me to use that API, I have to have some kind of billing. So the idea is not to use those. You can definitely do some research on free APIs, maybe related to something you think you want to add to your UI for your app, okay? And here's the key. It needs to be somewhat related, right? So loosely, as I said before, I mean, mine's fairly straightforward and honestly, I didn't plan for this, but it really kind of makes sense for me now to have the 3 pieces, the Latin long from the navigator, the AQI, and then temperature, okay? So now that I've kind of talked about it, and what I'm going to end up doing is, at least maybe in 6.2, is go ahead and draft the first part of step 6. Now, what we'll end up doing in week 17 is we'll move your step 6 into, matter of fact, there is some stuff we do need to do with cleaning up and refactoring for step 6. So maybe we'll also do that in 6.2. We'll see. We'll kind of see where that ends up landing. But in this case, let me bring this back, right? So, so in your reply, what's your thoughts on API data you think you would use, and tell us how it applies to your app? So think about that. Again, look at Open Weather app, look at something else, right? Is it doable, right? So I think it's doable. Is there an alternative? Well, that's kind of what I was talking about before, is let's say you just chose to reintegrate, or not to but to integrate what we've already done and have AQI there. Well, I'd give you, and I guess this is where I would ask you, do you think 80 points out of 100 to doing that is fair? Honestly, it's important to me if you think it's fair, okay? So that's in this post, I want you to reply with your thoughts on what I've covered, right? So the requirements that I've talked about, do you see a way, what is some API data you would want to add to your app? What do you think of this idea of just setting up what we've already done, integrating that into your step 6, and then alternatives, like what's something else we could do here? Because maybe, if you did want to grab an API, but you felt like you could just go to the console with it instead of going to the UI, I'd be open to a conversation about that. So in the context of this, you're going to reply with content that covers, the above points, like these things I've talked about here, and then reply to another student, because maybe a student has a question or just a comment, so reply to that. So I've gone over what you need to do for this one. I've gone over because in this week, And this week, week 16, we are on break. So I was like, wait a minute, let me just verify that just to make sure, because I always get a little like time laggy. Yeah, so in that case, 93. If we roll here is the holiday, and this would be 16. Yeah, okay, so I'm okay there. So as we're moving into this, the question would be what about the Thursday night, right? What about the Thursday night items that are over Thanksgiving? I'm going to give you until Monday night to get those done. But again, this would be a great thing for you to work on if you wanted to over Thanksgiving break, because maybe you're somebody, many of us have end of the semester projects, and the sooner you could work on them, right, the better. So that's I think when I'm now looking forward to this, I think in 6.2, what I'm going to have us do is some of the refactoring, and then start the integration of that AQI, and then for next week, for week 17, you'll actually want to determine how you're going to approach that. But for today, you're just going to think about it. Like, give this some thought. There is some great information out there. If you have some ideas about what you think you would want to add, if it's not in the realm of what I've talked about today, right? Go do some research and see if you can find some free APIs for that. All right, hope this helps. Now it's time for me to work on 16.1. All right, talk to you later. Bye.